people out there in the real world can see. Okay, so what's the first thing that you notice? The curtain is like really violet.
Violet.
Red violet, purple.
How dare I say purple?
I know. It's in the purple thing. If we look at it, it's more kind of like a dusky kind of rose color in real life. But if we're going by her photograph, it's a dusky kind of rose color. It's not quite as saturated as it is here. It looks a little bit grayer, but it's still a rose kind of color. And that color is not vibrant. It's not neutral. I would call it a moderate intensity color. Now, you have highly intense on one end of the spectrum, just like you have black on one end of the spectrum. You have highly neutral on the left side of the spectrum, just like you have white. You could flip those if you want to. I don't care. The point is they're polar opposites. Very neutral, very intense. Very desaturated, very saturated. And in the middle, there is moderate intensity. And between moderate intensity and intensity, they're varying degrees, right? And between moderate intensity and neutral, there's varying degrees. So it's not either or. It's a continuum. You guys understanding me on Teams?
Yes, sir.
There's Olivia. We were talking about you. Are you there? Olivia?
She said she was having trouble hearing.
Oh. Let me see. I'm really scared to do this. Chat. Okay, she's going to transfer to another device. Well, yeah, obviously, different technology, different stuff. I can barely hear because of this stupid air conditioner. But it's so hot in here. Okay, so what I thought I would do is I'm going to pull up my handy dandy little camera here. Which is really cool that we can do that. And I'm going to tile to the left and then pick up on the right. And I'm going to put this little painting over here. Maybe I'll remove this painting. No, that won't work. Doesn't really matter. Just to kind of pick up some way of expressing this color and the mixture of the color. So I'm going to put a little bit of quinacridone on my palette. Why? Why? Why am I using quinacridone? Because it's red. It's in the red family. Duh, right? So I've got this color, right, of red. Let's see if I can't zoom in. Can you guys see that red online?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. So if I want to
Yes, I'm here now. Bye.
Yay! If I want
Sorry.
to neutralize that color, I have to mix it with green. So I'm going to mix it with green. Now the problem is I have no idea what color I have. Why do I have no idea what color I have? Because it's too dark. It's very hard to see a color when it's dark like that. So you have to lighten the color. My guess, because I have fairly sensitive eyes, is that it's going to be too green, meaning that green has really overpowered the red. But the best way to tell is to add a little bit of white to it. So I'm going to put a little white to the side, and I'm going to mix it up. And we can see that we have like a really gray color there, right? So it's actually neither green nor red, right? But it's a gray, a kind of cool gray tone. If I lighten it even more, we can tell even better. So we've created a neutral color for ourselves. Now on the screen it looks, it's pretty similar. So that's good. All right. So we know that we want it to be in the red family, right? So I'm going to add just a little bit of red. That mixture. And it gets really violet at that point. The reason for that is because quinacridone is by nature already a violety color. Okay? So in order to retain the redness, but make it not so violety, we add the complement of violet, which is what? Yellow. So I'm doling it out a little bit. And it may turn a little bit brownish. And actually, this color is going to come in handy momentarily. But the point is that we've neutralized it a little bit more. Can you guys see that? Olivia, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so now we've got kind of a warmer, brownish neutral. This is definitely warmer as a color, right? If you look at like battleship gray, that's a cool neutral color versus khaki, which is a warmer neutral color. Like a paper bag is a warmer neutral versus, I don't know, like a gray sweatshirt kind of color, right? Which is a cooler neutral. You follow what I mean? So all we're thinking about is coolness versus warmth at this point. Now the other thing about that color is that it's lighter in the lighter spots, right? So I'm going to come out here to the side of that existing color. And I'm going to, lighten it up. Now the question is, are we getting a value that's more similar to the lighter values that are in the curtain right now? Yes or no? Yeah, we are. And what did I say the other day? Nobody remembers. It's more about matching the value than it is about the color. Does that make sense? So it's the correct value for these lighter areas, but it's not red enough, right? It needs to, that neutrality needs to be lifted up into the moderate zone. So right now I'm mixing my quinacridone with just a hint of yellow to make it more of a red, like a classic red, right? Does everybody see that? Okay. And now I'm going to take just a little bit of that color and I'm going to introduce it into my mixture. Are we getting closer?
Yeah.
We are getting closer. So I might add just a little bit more. Now what do we think? Yeah? Now we've got a rose color, right? Now, I could have come about that many different ways, right? What I was trying to express was that essentially we've got to get a neutral color happening that's in the same family, right? Which originally it wasn't because of the two colors we were using, the quinacridone and the permanent green. The problem is that every color has its own peculiar lean. Like quinacridone leans violet. Obviously, permanent green leans a little bit towards the yellow end of the spectrum because it's canceling out the violet and the red, which is giving you this dead neutral. Does that make sense to everybody? So, like another alternative for mixing the same color, because you might be saying, well, how am I supposed to remember all that? Well, we could start with our red, which is the magenta, mixed with what? Yellow, right? So we start with that magenta mixed with yellow. Then we add white to it to tint it, which is to what? What's wrong with that color?
It's too intense.
It's too intense. It's too much in the pink spectrum. That's not pink. It's like a dusky rose color. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes.
Thank you. So then I could say, let me try just a little bit of the green and see what happens with it. So I'm going to divide this in half. Does that get us our color? Yeah. So what's the most important thing? That we start with a big bulk, if you're going to be painting that big of an area of color, of that reddish color. And that you then add white to tint it, and that you then add the complement to neutralize it. Does that make sense, Olivia?
Yes.
All right, now the next question that you may ask is, how do I get the shadows that are there? So now I'm going to add the green and the red, so that red that I just mixed, and the green. I wish you guys could see the palette at the same time that I'm mixing it. That's why I was kind of mixing on the board there. Okay. So I made my red, and I mixed green in it. You follow me? So now I have a dark version of that same color that's up there with the tint in it. Does that make sense? Olivia, does that make sense?
I think so. I can't see it. You can't see what
Oh.
you're doing.
Sorry.
You're fine.
Now can you see it?
No, it's more blurry than it was before.
Hold on. Now can you see it?
Now it has like all these pixels.
Pixels.
I don't know if it's like my computer or what.
Wonder why that's happening. But I was zoomed in a minute ago. You can
Did
see
anybody?
you can see the colors though, right?
Yes.
Okay, well that's the most important thing. So now I'm going to take the color that I've got, and I'm going to find the in-between color by blending together. See, now I have a gradation of tone. Do you see what I mean? So that would be these bridge colors, like in here. That would be this middle color here, which is the halfway between my tint and my shadow. And then for the lightest areas, I'm going to just simply add more white to it. And then blend that in with the tone that's next to it. So really what you could do is mix up a big old pile of the dark tone and then the light tone and create a gradation in between the two. Does that make sense to everybody? What's happening there? Olivia, can you see that?
Yes. So like what are all the colors that you used?
All I've used is the quinacridone magenta,
Okay.
some red to get my pure red. Sorry, start over. Some quinacridone magenta mixed with my yellow to get that fire engine red, which is this color right here. Okay?
Okay.
Then I mixed it with green, and I'm going to get this dark color here. Okay?
Okay.
A little bit of green. More red than green. And then I'm going to add white to it slowly to arrive at this color. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yes. Yes, got it.
So that's essentially, what we're trying to achieve here is color matching, which is not easy when you haven't done it before. But we're learning. So obviously that's the biggest problem, Olivia, in your painting, is that this area is way too violet, number one, and number two, the shadows aren't dark enough. Right. Tile to the left. Okay. So not only is this area too intense, too violet, but it's also, the darks are not dark enough. If we squint at it, you can see that these darks are really, really rich darks. And that's going to be just the straight up, Olivia, if you're listening to me, that's just going to be the straight up quinacridone mixed with a little bit of yellow to make it red, mixed with green to make that dark kind of brownish red color. Does that make sense, Olivia?
For the shadow, right?
Yes, for the shadow.
Okay, yes.
And then you'll just add light to that mixture or white to that mixture to get your, moderate darks, mid darks, and your lights. That makes sense?
Yes.
So it's the same color. The weird thing, and that's why I'm saying, like, when you mix that dark, and this is especially true with the palette that we're using, most of the colors in their pure strength, like the phthalo, for instance, The minute that you mix it with the brown, I mean, you're getting like a black color. So how do you know what color it is? Well, you have to add a little bit of white to see it. And that color might become useful. But what's really useful is that dark that you're going to be using in the shadows. Because remember, Clarissa, Danny, Elizabeth, Peyton, and everybody else in the class, we weren't making the darks dark enough, right? That's like the standard issue that every one of us is having, is not having those darks dark enough. Okay? All right. So anyway, like if we look at Danny's real quick, or not Danny's, Joe's real quick. Yeah, I thought I did. Is it not there? Oh, it's right there. I'm an idiot. Stop saying that about yourself. So he's got a great rough end, right? But obviously the darks up here all need to be a lot darker. Like this tone right here needs to be here because this tone is nowhere near as light as this tone. Like if you look at this part, look on my screen. If you look at this part and you compare it to any tone that's here, there's nowhere near the light that's up here. Yet in your painting, the light here and the light here is identical. So the dark that you have in your painting right now in this zone needs to be here. And these lines, like these areas here and here, those all need to be that pure out of the tube dark mixture that you're getting. Does that make sense? So you have all the right colors, it's just they're not in the right places. And that's true for all of you. You're able to mix the right colors. It's just they're not in the right places. So like if we compare like squinting, like squint at this photograph and squint at your painting, and you can see that the side of this bracket, whatever it is not nearly dark enough for what needs to be happening to get that sense of light and shadow. So for instance, these lights here, which you think are light, need to be in these shadow areas, and these areas here that you think are light need to be even lighter. So they need more white to them. And then this just needs to be this color, but a little bit closer to the dark color, a little less white in it. Does that make sense to everybody? So I think the most important thing right now, Sophia, is for you to get neutral area filled in. And I think white color, it just may need a little bit more quinacridone, and I mean a little bit, to make it a little more navy, kind of violet, because this is a little greenish. But that doesn't mean that this color won't come in handy in these really deep shadows here. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes,
but
sir.
I think the colors that you have in this area, those violet colors, look great. I think that this guy is going to look 1,000 times better once you have the dark behind him.
Oh yeah, it looks so bland right now, but it's because I don't have any of the dark tones yet.
Right. And then the other thing that I would say is that, like this other little metallic guy that you've got on the left-hand side, you're going to have violets in here as well.
Yes.
So all of these are violet tints, T-I-N-T-S. And that's going to help with the colors of everything else. But I think the biggest concern I have is with your process. You want to kind of get everything worked up simultaneously. So you've gone a little bit too far detail-wise in some of these shapes, whereas you should have had more of a block in of just the standard kind of darks and violets and things like that, and then get into the detail. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that's what I'm going to do for the rest of the project, is just go back and put all the big parts in and then go.
So, and that should be relatively quick.
Yeah, it shouldn't take too long. I was just trying to get a feel for like muscle memory almost.
Right.
at least for that left part, because I can kind of experiment better with the
And
big areas.
mix colors as well.
Hmm.
But I think most of your colors look pretty good. I think that box in the lower right hand may be a little bit too saturated.
Yeah.
Needs to be a little bit less green, but not by making it more neutral. Really, it's more about adding white to it.
Yeah, I can just like add light green.
Yep. All right.
It definitely
Cool.
looks a lot brighter in my real life, but it's just because my lighting was bad. I just didn't have time to edit it.
It looks lighter in your real life.
Yeah,
Lighter
but
in
it does look too saturated. I see what you mean. It's just like it's dimmer in the photo, but it does need to be lightened up anyway.
Okay. Cool.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Well, Clarissa, do you have anything you want to send me?
Yeah, I sent it to you on email.
Okay, I'm going to look for it now.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Clarissa, can you see everything?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay. So the main thing is that, for instance, this guy is a little bit too light in your painting. It needs to be darker. These are pretty dark tones.
Okay.
And I also think that these areas here shouldn't be so saturated. It should be more about mixing blue with your burnt sienna and leaning it a little more towards the burnt sienna side of things.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So the same tone that you got here, which was blue and burnt sienna, right?
Right. Yes, sir.
To get this dark, or to get this dark, right?
Uh-huh.
Just mix white with that to lighten it so that it's the same value as the blue that you have here.
Okay.
But then add a little bit more burnt sienna so that it's a little more brownish.
Okay.
And you can see here it would be even more burnt sienna.
Right.
But that's even more brown than this is.
Huh.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
And then obviously, like if you squint, like this is pretty dark,
Uh-huh.
but there's no light in here that's even close to as light as in here.
Mm-hmm.
So this whole area here, the same color, but mixed with more white.
Okay.
To get that lighter tone.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
The only other thing that I could say is just, try to pay attention a little bit more structurally to what you have going on in the drapery, because you're kind of oversimplifying things back here.
Okay.
Okay?
All right. Yes, sir. Thank you.
The pipe looks good. I like the reflection of the pipe over here. Oh, that's really good. It's just trying to match tone more, meaning intensity versus desaturation, and trying to match values. Like these values need to be a lot lighter.
Okay.
Just all you got to do is squint at the painting, squint at that upper left-hand corner of your painting, and then squint at the upper left-hand corner of the photograph.
Uh-huh.
Squint at the bottom middle of the painting down here, and then squint at your photograph and compare the two.
Okay.
You follow what I mean?
Yes, sir. Uh-huh.
Okay. I'm just I feel like this area is good. So I think you just but I think that, like, for instance, if I squint the gaze to the plane, this top plane here is much lighter than the side. It's also maybe a little more saturated. So if you could mix this color with this color and then add white to it, you're going to get a tone. I think the tonality here is good, except, you can have a lighter white. Pure white at the top. The darks here. I think as this goes up, it's going to get lighter. So this will probably become this color. And this color will be lighter. And then, the tone is shift. Okay, so you've got the right color here. So what you're going to do to get this color is essentially like this color. Okay, this is the shift to a darker tone. It's not quite a cylinder. It's like a square cylinder.
So it's got like a curve of one.
And then you'll take that same color and you'll do the stripe it first. Then you'll lay that line on top of it. Right. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I need to work on the light.
Right. Cool.
Yes.
Okay, golly. So we were saying that this is too light. Look at how dark it is. We were saying that there's 1, 2 values here. There's 1, 2, 3 values here. This tone is very similar to the tone that you have here, versus in the painting, this is a much darker tone, more like this tone. Does that make sense? Look at how as this moves down into space, this tone becomes very much like this tone. So we need to make this area this value. Does that make sense to everybody? Olivia, do you understand what I'm saying now?
Yes.
So I just want to show you guys, though, this one thing about Olivia's painting. Tell me what you guys think of her color now. Is that better? Yeah, it's a lot better than it was, right? It's not that intense violet anymore. So she was able to desaturate that color. But like Olivia, now that this is not black and white, look at how white the edge of your painting is. Is this white? It's more like a light gray, right? The only white is right here. You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But again, I'm telling you, if you just desaturate your painting and compare it to the photograph, you can immediately see, look at how lost all of these edges are in here. Like, look at how focused that edge is and how all of these edges become very soft. And that's because the values are so similar. values that are similar don't push against each other. They tend to kind of coalesce. Now you could also stand to blend the edge, like right here. See how sharp it is right here? But even if you just made this top plane right here darker, and made this darker, and made this darker, and made this darker, that's going to suck all of that like back into a vortex. Does that make sense to everybody? So I'm telling you, I'm begging you, because now on Monday, as you work to finish these up, value, value, value. Look at your photograph, black and white. Look at your image of your painting, black and white. And really push towards value, okay? Because that makes or breaks the painting, okay? All right, I'll send you guys an email of where to turn it in and everything. So that's your homework, is to just work on finishing these up for Monday afternoon. So have a good weekend, and we'll see you then. Clean up.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.